In August 2018, a case unfolded in Frederick, Colorado that would grip the world with its chilling blend of deception, domestic life, and unimaginable violence. At the center of it was a family that, to the outside world, appeared stable, loving, and full of promise. Shanann Watts, a devoted mother navigating chronic illness while building a career in direct sales, shared her life openly online. Her posts painted a portrait of a supportive husband, 2 energetic daughters, and a 3rd child on the way. A carefully curated image that resonated with thousands who saw in her story a version of the American dream. But behind the smiling photographs and upbeat live streams, fractures were forming, quietly at first, then with increasing urgency. Financial strain, marital tension, and emotional distance began to erode the foundation of the Watts household. And in the span of just a few days, the facade collapsed entirely. In the early hours of August 13, 2018, just after 2 a.m., Shanann returned home from a business trip. She had spent the weekend working with her Thrive team, and her friend and co-worker, Nicole Atkinson, had driven her home from the airport. After a long day of travel, Nicole waited to make sure Shanann made it inside safely before heading home herself. She had no way of knowing she would be the last person outside that house to ever see Shanann alive. 2 days later, on August 15th, everything that once seemed normal about the Watts family shattered. Shanann's body was discovered in a shallow grave near an oil site roughly 40 miles from her home. The next day, the bodies of her daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Cece, were found as well, hidden inside crude oil tanks only a short distance away. Investigators quickly learned that Shanann had been strangled and both girls had been smothered. Bella, the oldest, showed signs that she had fought desperately in her final moments. These discoveries did not come after a long search or a complex investigation. The person responsible told authorities exactly where to find them. That person was Chris Watts, Shanann's husband and the father of Bella, Cece, and their unborn child. What followed was a disappearance that sparked national attention, a televised plea that raised more questions than answers, and an investigation that unraveled a truth far darker than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of how a seemingly ordinary family became the focus of one of the most disturbing criminal cases in recent history, and how the smallest details, the quietest inconsistencies, and the calmest demeanor can sometimes reveal the most devastating truths. Today, we're going to walk through how this case unfolded, from the moment Shanann stepped through her front door that night, to the unraveling of Chris's lies, and to the questions that still linger years later. If you enjoyed these episodes, I encourage you to follow or subscribe to Criminal Interrupted on your favorite podcast app. As I've mentioned before, I'm currently focusing on this podcast full-time due to a heart condition, so every follow and review makes a huge difference. Thank you for listening and for your incredible support. This is Criminal Interrupted. Chris and Shanann first crossed paths in 2010, connecting through a mutual friend who believed they might be a good match. Before they ever met in person, Chris sent Shanann a Facebook friend request. She declined it. At the time, she was emerging from the end of a difficult marriage and was cautious about letting anyone new into her life. Shanann had married her high school acquaintance, Leonard King, shortly after graduation. Despite concerns from friends that she was too young, she was determined to build a traditional family life. She briefly attended college, but left to work while Leonard pursued law school. Their relationship deteriorated, and by 2007, the marriage had ended. After the divorce, Shanann had to rebuild her life from the ground up. She worked multiple jobs and by age 25, managed to purchase her first home. It was a significant milestone after years of instability. So when Chris reached out again in July 2010, this time with a message, Shanann hesitated but eventually responded. Their conversations developed quickly, and they shared similar backgrounds. Both born in the mid-1980s, both raised in North Carolina, but their personalities differed. Shanann had been involved in theatre and was known to be organised and responsible, while Chris was known to be more quiet, athletic, and reserved. As their relationship grew, Shanann naturally took on a more assertive role, while Chris was viewed as steady and reliable. After 2 years together, they became engaged and decided to relocate to Colorado. Chris moved first to begin a new job, and on November 3rd, 2012, they were married in Charlotte, North Carolina. Shanann joined him in Colorado shortly after the wedding. Their first daughter, Bella, was born on December 17, 2013. For Shanann, the pregnancy was unexpected in the best possible way. She had struggled with health issues for years, including lupus and fibromyalgia, and had been told that pregnancy would be unlikely. Her pregnancy was considered high risk, and she stopped working during that time. Chris was employed as a mechanic at a local dealership. In late 2014, Shanann learned she was pregnant again. This second pregnancy was also high risk and physically demanding. Their daughter, Celeste, known as Cece, was born on July 17, 2015. But the period surrounding Cece's birth was marked by financial strain. In June 2015, 1 month before she was born, the couple filed for bankruptcy. Despite a combined income of roughly $90,000 a year, their expenses far exceeded what they could manage. They had purchased a home valued at around $400,000 and carried significant credit card and student loan debt. Both children had medical needs, adding to the financial pressure. Their bankruptcy filing noted that their mortgage and car payments consumed most of their income, and they had fallen behind on HOA fees, resulting in legal action. Around this time, Chris transitioned from working as a mechanic to becoming an oil field technician for Anadarko Petroleum. Severe carpal tunnel syndrome had made it difficult for him to continue in his previous role. Shanann worked at a call center for the Children's Hospital in Colorado, but her income was limited. Despite their efforts, the family continued to struggle to stay afloat. As the Watts family financial situation worsened, Shanann shifted her career in an effort to regain stability. She entered direct sales with the multi-level marketing company Thrive, also known as Lavelle, promoting health and wellness supplements. What began as part-time work quickly became her full-time focus. To build her customer base, she relied heavily on social media, using her Facebook page not only to market the products, but to present a polished version of her life. Her online presence was carefully curated. She did not share the reality of their bankruptcy, the mounting debt, or the lawsuit from their homeowners association. Instead, she projected an image of success, a strong marriage, healthy children, and a thriving career. The intention was clear. If people admired her life, they might be more inclined to buy what she was selling. To many who followed her online, and even to friends and extended family, Chris and Shanann appeared to be the perfect couple. Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandy, believed Chris was patient, dependable, and supportive of Shanann's chronic health issues. Shanann shared nearly every aspect of her family's life publicly. On Father's Day, she posted a tribute to Chris, writing, quote, "Chris, we are so incredibly blessed to have you. You do so much every day for us, and you take such great care of us. You are the reason that I was brave enough to agree to number 3. From laundry to kids' showers, you are incredible, and we are so lucky to have you in our life. Happy Father's Day." End quote. It was a message filled with admiration and optimism for their future as a family of 5. The contrast between that public praise and what would soon unfold raises a chilling question. How did a family that appeared so stable end up in a tragedy that shocked the nation? By June 2018, subtle and unmistakable changes began to appear. Chris grew distant, quiet, withdrawn, and disengaged from Shanann and their daughters. Around this time, Shanann planned a 6-week trip to North Carolina with Bella, Cece, and her unborn child. Chris stayed behind in Colorado for work, with plans to join them later. Early July text messages reveal Shanann's growing concern. On July 10th, she asked Chris if he was alright, noting how silent he had been during their recent phone call. She pleaded with him to talk to her. Chris insisted he was fine and blamed work stress, but his withdrawal continued. He began ignoring her calls and responding to her messages with brief, infrequent replies. Meanwhile, Shanann faced renewed conflict with Chris's family during the visit. Tensions with his parents, Cindy and Ronnie, were long-standing. One of the earliest sources of conflict came from personality differences. Shanann was outspoken, organised, and direct, while Cindy and Ronnie were more reserved. Cindy, in particular, felt that Shanann was controlling and overly critical of Chris. Shanann, on the other hand, felt that Chris's parents did not respect her boundaries or her parenting decisions. The most significant and well-documented issue involved the health of the Watts children. Both Bella and Cece had medical needs, and Cece's severe peanut allergy required strict precautions. Shanann repeatedly emphasized the seriousness of this allergy, but she felt that Cindy did not take it seriously. This tension escalated during the 2018 North Carolina visit, when Cindy gave the girls ice cream containing peanut ingredients. Shanann viewed this as a dangerous disregard for Cece's safety, while Cindy later claimed she believed Shanann exaggerated the allergy. The incident led to a major argument and a complete breakdown in communication for the remainder of the trip. Shanann told Chris what had happened, expecting his support. Instead, he seemed detached. In a message to him, she wrote, quote, "These kids are my world, and I have to protect them from the evil of the world. I shouldn't have to protect them from evil family. Our kids deserve the same love and attention that other kids get, nothing less," end quote. On July 24th, she addressed the growing emotional distance directly. Quote, "I realized during this trip what's missing in our relationship. It's only one-way emotions and feelings. I can't come back like this. I need you to meet me halfway. While you are working and living this bachelor life, I'm carrying our 3rd child and fighting with 2 kids daily and trying to work and make money. It's not hard to text. I love you and I miss you." End quote. And finally, she reminded him of their history. Quote, "Seriously, we didn't just start dating yesterday. We've been together 8 years and we have 2.5 kids together." End quote. This incident with the peanut-containing ice cream marked a turning point. Shanann viewed it as a profound betrayal, not only because of the danger it posed to Cece, but because Chris seemed unwilling to defend their daughter. His lack of reaction deepened the rift between them and intensified Shanann's sense that something was terribly wrong. Despite the tension, Chris traveled to North Carolina on July 31st to join his family for the final week of their trip. But the reunion did little to ease Shanann's concerns. Her family immediately noticed how distant he seemed. He was quiet, detached, and uncharacteristically cold toward both Shanann and the children. Shanann confided in her friends about the lack of intimacy. She wrote, quote, "He's kissed me once since he's been here, and that was at the airport. I kissed him. No grabbing my ass, no hug, no nothing. I just wanted to cry." End quote. She described how he avoided physical affection and dismissed her attempts to discuss their relationship. In another message she wrote, quote, "Kids are in bed. I took a night shower, which means I want to have sex and he knows it. And he's over here doing a fucking push-up challenge instead of discussing anything or fucking me. I'm over here crying in silence. He's never been like this. 5.5 fucking weeks and no sex. Unless he was getting it somewhere else." End quote. In early August, the family returned to Colorado. Shanann hoped that being home might restore some sense of normalcy. Instead, the distance between them only grew. The final days of their marriage and the tragedy that followed were now approaching. The fragile hope that a return home would fix the Watts' marriage was immediately squashed. Just as they returned to Colorado, Chris delivered a devastating verbal reality to Shanann. He was not excited about having a third child. On August 6, Shanann texted a friend to confide in the painful truth. Quote, Chris told me last night that he is scared to death about this third baby, and that he's happy with just Bella and Celeste, and that he doesn't want another baby. End quote. The couple still attended their ultrasound appointment on August 9th. Though they learned the sex of the baby, a little boy they planned to name Nico, Chris's disinterest was palpable. Shanann described the scene to her friend, that they sat in the living room, and that she thought it would be a great thing to be having a baby. She grabbed his hand during the ultrasound, and he didn't grab it back. The emotional and physical rejection was clear. Later that same day, Shanann thought they had a breakthrough. She called friends, claiming she and Chris had a long, earnest conversation, and for a moment, he seemed happier about the baby now that he knew it was a boy. They officially chose the name Nico, and Chris even kissed her before bed. But this momentary peace was fragile. Shanann had to leave town immediately for a business trip. As soon as she was gone, Chris delivered the fatal blow. He told Shanann that he didn't think the relationship was going to work and that he wanted to separate. Shanann's gut told her there was a more sinister reason for his complete withdrawal. The night Chris was alone, he went to a Rockies baseball game and then claimed he went out for salmon and a beer. Shanann, the family's accountant, noticed a charge of over $60 for this single meal on August 11th. She looked up the restaurant's menu and calculated the meal that should have cost closer to $30. The question loomed, what did he spend the other $30 on? Shanann was now convinced, a chilling feeling she could not shake, that Chris was having an affair. On the final full day of her life, Shanann poured all her desperation into a letter she planned to give Chris immediately upon her return. She even took a picture of it and sent it to her friend. The letter was a heartbroken plea. Quote, My dearest Chris, I don't know where to begin. I am so lost for words. I can't even explain how hard this pain is. I missed your morning breath, your touch, your lips, your kisses. I missed seeing you naked and on top of me, making love to me. I will suck it up and be civil with your family because I love you. I can't lose you. I won't lose you without a fight. I will fight for your love. Fight for us. Just talk to me. Tell me what you need. I love you, baby, with all my heart. Happy anniversary. Love always, Shanann. End quote. This was Shanann's last effort to save her marriage, a marriage that was already secretly doomed by Chris's decision. Shanann was dropped off at her home around 1:48 a.m. on Monday, August 13th. She had a crucial OB/GYN appointment and an important business call scheduled for that morning. Hours later, her friend, Nicole, offered to take her to the doctor. When Nicole received no reply, a highly unusual silence for the social media active Shanann, she quickly realized that something was terribly wrong. Alarmed, Nicole confirmed Shanann had missed both her doctor's appointments and her scheduled business call. Nicole drove to the Watts' home. Peeking through the garage, she saw Shanann's car still parked inside. She used the door code, but the door was secured from the inside by a privacy latch. Yelling through the small gap, Nicole was met with a complete silence. She noticed one critical detail screaming out to her. Shanann's black flip-flops, the only shoes she ever wore, were still sitting by the front door. Shanann's car and shoes were home, but Shanann was not responding. The red flags were screaming. Nicole immediately texted Chris, who was at work, asking where Shanann was. Chris's reply was the first major red flag for investigators. He claimed that Shanann was upset after they discussed divorce that morning and had told him she was going to a friend's house with the kids to reset. Conveniently, he claimed he could not remember which friend she was visiting. Nicole instantly shot down his story, quote, No, I've talked to the friends. I'm really worried. Nobody knows where she is, end quote. Chris claimed he would leave work and meet her at the house. But Nicole's gut feeling, fueled by the weeks of turmoil, was deafening. She was relentless in her pursuit of the truth, and at around 1:30 p.m., Nicole called the police, requesting a formal welfare check. When the police arrived at the Watts' home, they initially offered Nicole standard, comforting explanations for Shanann's disappearance. Maybe her phone died, perhaps a friend picked her up in another car, but Nicole and Shanann's mother, Sandy, who was now terrified, knew better. Chris had given Sandy the same convenient story he gave Nicole, that Shanann had taken the girls to a friend's house. The responding officer was restricted, unable to enter the home without a warrant or permission, and Chris had not arrived. Finally, the officer contacted Chris by phone. Chris repeated the prepared story. Shanann took the girls to a friend's house and promised he was 5 minutes away. This statement was a massive red flag for Nicole. Chris had been telling her he was 5 minutes away at least twice before, including 45 minutes prior to the officer's call. When Chris finally did arrive, his behaviour was instantly bizarre. Instead of running inside to check for his family, he opened the garage door and began looking through Shanann's car. As he did this, Nicole noticed a critical detail. The two girls' car seats were still inside the car. She immediately called this out as extremely odd. Shanann would have never left the car seats behind. They were essential for Bella and Cece to travel safely. This was the first concrete piece of evidence that Chris's story didn't add up. Chris eventually went inside, but again, he didn't call out for Shanann or the girls. He closed the door behind him, blocking the officer and Nicole. After a minute, he emerged and finally opened the front door. They searched the house room by room. Chris attempted to appear concerned, but was doing a visibly poor job, only pointing out that the girls' cherished blankets were gone. They also found that Shanann had left behind many of her essential personal belongings. In one eerie moment, caught on the officer's body camera footage, a pregnancy advertisement came on the living room television as the police spoke to Chris. The investigation escalated when a watchful neighbour came by and invited Chris and the officer over. The neighbour had security cameras pointed directly at the Watts' driveway, and the footage could finally establish a timeline. Up until this moment, Chris had been unnervingly calm, but as they gathered at the neighbour's house to watch the security footage, his composure broke. He became visibly antsy, constantly fidgeting, putting his hands on his head, scrolling on his phone, and talking non-stop, a clear display of extreme nervousness. And then the footage played. It showed that around 5:17 a.m. that morning, Chris's truck backed into the driveway. It showed him loading something into the back seat, and then he drove away. No Shanann, no little girls, no other cars, nothing else was caught on that camera. As Chris left to meet a second officer, the concerned neighbour pulled the new officer aside. He explained the situation and definitely told the police, quote, "Something's not right here," end quote. Hours later, with no sign of Shanann, Bella, or Cece, the search escalated, bringing in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, and the FBI. Chris Watts then gave a now infamous television interview, pleading for the safe return of his family. When asked what was going on around his house, he provided a bizarrely clinical, almost detached description of the search efforts.
Give me your first and last name.
Chris Watts, WATTS.
What's going on right now around your house?
Right now, you got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent, see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now, it's just like they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
What happened? Your wife came home. Tell me what's...
She came home from the airport 2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here. And like about 12:10 and that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say, but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people is like, if she's not getting back to her, like if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. Like she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. And then walked in the house, and nothing was vanished. Nothing was here. I mean, she wasn't here. The kids weren't here. Nobody was here.
What's your wife's name?
Shanann, Shanann.
What's your kids' name?
Bella and Celeste.
And you spell Celeste?
Celeste.
How old are your daughters?
4, Bella's 4, Celeste is 3.
Did you guys get into an argument before she left?
It wasn't like an argument. We had an emotional conversation, but I'll leave it at that. But I just want them back. I just want them to come back. And if they're not safe right now, that's what's tearing me apart. Because if they are safe, they're coming back. But if they're not, this has got to stop. Like, somebody has to come forward.
You spoken to her family, like her parents?
Yeah, they've been in constant contact, like, every hour. I mean, everybody back in North Carolina and the East Coast. I mean, from Maine to Florida.
What is her parents saying to you? Like,
They're just like if they need to get on a flight, just let them know. Because, I mean, they feel helpless right now because they're on the opposite side of the country. I mean, Colorado is, I mean, you can't just drive around and look. I mean, it's just like, you wouldn't really know what you're looking for. That's what the cops pretty much told me. That first day, I was like, I want to get out and drive around. They said, you won't know what to look for.
Last couple questions. What is law enforcement, whatever that police or the sheriffs or your neighbors, what's police saying to you?
Right now, what they're doing right now is with the canines in the sense. I think this is the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing they've done so far because yesterday the Frederick Police Department did all the searching of the house and tried to gather whatever information they could. And with the detectives, officers, and sergeants, and today it's, I mean, obviously with all the activity that's around, it's there's a lot going on around here, and I really hope that all of this can lead to something positive.
What did your neighbors, did they see anything? Did your neighbors see anything?
No, like the police department went door to door asking, like, cameras and everything, just like nothing.
And my last question, if you have any of them, so feel free to step in. My last question is, if your wife can see this, if she can watch this, what would you like to tell your wife and your kids?
Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here.
What was intended to generate sympathy instead became a stark contrast to the truth that would soon emerge. Chris's televised plea quickly became a cultural reference point. Viewers immediately noticed his unusual body language, his constant swaying, his tightly crossed arms, and his tendency to stare directly into the camera with an unsettling stillness. These behaviours became so recognisable that, in later cases, people would describe similar conduct as giving Chris Watts vibes. This public reaction, combined with the concerns of investigators, accelerated the decision to bring Chris in for formal questioning. When Chris sat down for his first formal interrogation, investigators immediately noticed how unstable his explanations were. At the start, he tried to downplay the situation, suggesting that Shanann might simply be taking time to decompress at a friend's house. But as detectives pressed him, his story shifted. He pointed to the heavy police presence outside his home, the patrol cars, the news crews, the canine units, and claimed that seeing all of it made him reconsider. Now, he said, he believed someone may have taken her. He insisted that if it were the case, it would have had to be someone she knew, because there were no signs of forced entry. He also described feeling increasingly anxious as the hours passed, saying that while he had convinced himself she was safe the day before, he no longer felt that way. He told investigators that Shanann would have never let things escalate this far if she simply needed space. The conversation soon shifted to the state of their marriage. At this point, Chris finally admitted that he had told Shanann he wanted to separate. He explained he waited until she returned from her trip because he felt the conversation needed to happen face to face. According to him, Shanann was upset, but ultimately accepted what he was saying. He framed the separation as something he believed was best for the children, claiming he didn't want them growing up watching their parents pretend to be happy. He portrayed himself as someone trying to be honest rather than someone trying to escape responsibility. About an hour into the interview, the detective confronted him directly. pointing out how suspicious it looked that he had expressed a desire to end the marriage just before his family disappeared. Chris didn't deny how bad it looked. He said friends had already told him the same thing, that the timing made him appear guilty. He then shifted into defending his character. He described himself as non-confrontational, someone who avoids arguments and shuts down when people raise their voice. He insisted repeatedly that he would never harm Shanann or the children, emphasizing that violence was completely out of the character for him. Even as inconsistencies piled up, Chris continued to insist he had nothing to do with their disappearance. He maintained that he was not the kind of person capable of hurting his family, and he repeated that claim with calm certainty, even as investigators grew increasingly skeptical. Quote, "I promise you that I have nothing to do with, I am not that person. I've never been that person." End quote. Investigators remained unconvinced. They noticed that Chris repeatedly referred to Shanann and the girls in the past tense, an unconscious slip that suggested he already knew they were dead. He agreed to take a polygraph test and consented to a search of his phone, believing he had covered his tracks. The phone search revealed extensive marital conflict. It also exposed a major inconsistency in Chris's story. He claimed he had called local hospitals to check whether Shanann or the girls had been admitted, but the call log showed each call lasted less than a minute. To verify their suspicion, an officer called one of the same hospitals using a fake name. It took over 2 minutes just to receive an answer. Chris's calls were not genuine attempts to find his family. They were performative. Another alarming discovery emerged. After sending a few superficial texts to Shanann, messages like, quote, "If you take the kids somewhere, please let me know where they're at," end quote, Chris called his daughter's daycare. He asked to unenroll Bella and Cece. To investigators, this was a devastating indicator that Chris already knew the girls would never return. The most significant discovery, which provided a clear motive for the crime, was the confirmation of Shanann's fear. Chris was having an affair. Detectives discovered Chris was secretly involved with a co-worker at Anadarko named Nicole Kessinger. Once police obtained Nicole's phone records, the picture of Chris's double life became startlingly clear. Early on the morning of August 15th, an FBI agent confirmed the affair via emails found by a regional manager at Chris's job. Less than 2 hours later, Nicole Kessinger called the police herself. There is speculation about why she chose that exact moment to call, but Nicole claimed she saw Chris on the news pleading for his family's return and realizing he'd been lying to her about his life. According to her, Chris had told her his marriage was already over and he was almost divorced. She claimed she had, quote, "absolutely no idea that Shanann was pregnant," end quote. The investigation revealed their affair began in the early summer of 2018. Chris added Nicole as a contact on June 14th, and later that month they began meeting outside the office. Chris informed her he and Shanann were separating. By July, while Shanann was in North Carolina with the girls, the affair intensified. Chris and Nicole were seeing each other 4 to 5 times a week, and the relationship had become physical. Chris told Nicole his marriage was officially over. On July 14th, while Chris and Nicole were on a date at the Shelby American Collection Car Museum, Shanann tried calling Chris 4 different times, all of which went unanswered. This was during the exact period Shanann was freaking out over Chris's unexplained distance. Chris also saved semi-nude bikini pictures Nicole sent him on July 18th in a secret, disguised calculator app on his phone, a hidden vault for illicit photos and videos. 10 days later, they took a trip together to the Great Sand Dunes National Park and spent the night. In the days leading up to the murder, Chris was ignoring his pregnant wife's desperate pleas to save their marriage, instead engaging in a romantic whirlwind with his co-worker. This secret life, where he was misleading his mistress and actively abandoning his family, provided the clear, cold motive that investigators needed. The deceit Chris maintained reached truly sickening levels. On July 30th, he gave Nicole Kessinger a card containing a handwritten love letter. Then, only days later, he just up and left to join his family in North Carolina, acting as if his life were perfectly normal. All the while, he and Nicole continued their messaging, coordinating their secret romance. The sleuthing Shanann did from afar was absolutely correct. The $60 charge that prompted her suspicion on August 11th was not for one man's solo dinner. Chris was on a date with Nicole that night. He had stuck his 2 young daughters with a babysitter so he could run out on his heavily pregnant wife, confirming her worst fear that he was getting it from somewhere else. Her woman's intuition, that powerful gut feeling, was sadly accurate. Even as Shanann was desperately fighting for their marriage, Chris was already plotting his exit. In the days immediately preceding and following the disappearance, Chris's online searches were highly incriminating. He searched for 2 secluded vacation spots and searched for 2-person cars. The search for a 2-person car, specifically, signals clear premeditation. A man who believes his children are safe and returning home does not shop for vehicles that cannot accommodate 2 car seats. It suggested he knew the girls would never need to ride with him again. Most chillingly, Chris was texting with a realtor on the exact day his family went missing, inquiring about selling his large family home. At one point, the realtor asked why Shanann hadn't texted her about the sale, and Chris simply replied that he didn't know where she was, then bizarrely asked the realtor to pray for them. This bizarre conversation revealed a man casually moving on with his life while his family was supposedly missing. And the betrayal did not end there. While people were actively searching for Shanann, Cece, and Bella, Chris continued to text Nicole, discussing their future life together. All of these damning revelations were uncovered in just one day after searching Chris's phone. That very night, detectives received a crucial phone call from Shanann's mother, Sandy. Sandy told the police she was positive Chris had hurt Shanann. She noted his recent weird behavior and, chillingly, showed a very specific concern. She was afraid Chris was going to pour oil on the bodies and dispose of them somewhere. Sandy added that if Chris had attacked Shanann, she would have not been able to fight back due to a debilitating lupus diagnosis. This specific, highly relevant fear was immediately noted by the investigators. The next day, August 15th, 2 days after the family was reported missing, Chris arrived for his polygraph test. While this was happening, other officers were searching the Watts family home. They were initially struck by how unusually clean everything was. But in the master bedroom, they found a major abnormality. The bed was completely stripped. There were no sheets, no blankets, nothing. The search team found the top sheet and the pillowcases shoved inside the kitchen trash can. They noted that they could not find the fitted sheet anywhere. This was a massive red flag. The disposal of bedding suggested a struggle or cleanup attempt. By this point, suspicion was unanimous. Chris's story was nonsensical, his behavior was weird, and the police knew he was cheating and plotting his future. A CBI agent was so certain of his guilt that he advised Chris it would be really dumb to take a polygraph saying, quote, "If you did do something to the girls, we're going to find out," end quote. But Chris, clinging to his facade of innocence, insisted he had nothing to hide and nothing to lie about, so they proceeded with the test. After the polygraph test, 2 agents returned to the room and immediately delivered the fatal news.
So, it was completely clear that you were not honest during the testing, and I think you already know that. You did not pass the polygraph test. Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise. Chris, I'm nervous though. It's time. Just stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
There's a reason you feel sick to your stomach. And when people hold stuff inside, it makes you physically ill. And I can just tell on your face, I could tell from the second you walked in that you were wanting to just come clean and just be done with this. And I appreciate that because you knew sitting down in that chair that you weren't going to pass today, and you knew I was going to find out because I told you that. And then you continued to stay knowing that you could, at the end, say, you know what? I just need to get this out of my chest. Like, I just need to tell you what happened. We're not here to play games. We're not here to do any of that with you. We just want to know what happened. So can you start from the beginning and tell us what happened?
Everything that I had told you, I did not lie I tell you right now, like, I did not.
It's not even an option right now because you did not pass the polygraph, so I know you were being deceptive. So that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. That's the issue right now. Okay? So let's talk about that. I know you want to tell us. I can see it in your face.
After failing the polygraph test, Chris claimed the test results were faulty because he hadn't yet disclosed his affair with Nicole. The investigators knew better. Feeling the intense pressure, Chris asked to speak with his father, who had flown in from North Carolina the previous day, privately. Once alone with his father, Chris confessed to his initial, self-serving version of events.
Anything else you want to tell me? What's going on? Or what happened or anything? You know anything about it? When we had that conversation that morning, it was emotional. It was told her about separation and everything like that. Mm-hmm. What happened after that? I went downstairs. I don't want to protect her. What? I don't want to protect her. You don't want to protect her? I don't know what else to say. What happened? She hurt him? Yeah. And then well, no, I doubt that hurt her. You hurt her. She smelled it. Or choking. I didn't hear anything. When I was downstairs, came back up. They were gone. Taught her about separation and everything about she lost her. I don't know, like, what else to say, like, I freaked out. I wasn't like it. I heard like a little commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it. And then we went back upstairs and she was naked. I could see, like, she was on top of me. I'm choking her for that. But she's gone. They're blue. Yeah. She choked both of them with that. I freaked out when you sent me.
According to his first account, on August 13th, he told Shanann he wanted a separation. He claimed Shanann freaked out, went upstairs, and smothered Bella and Cece, killing them. Chris stated he went upstairs after hearing a commotion, found what Shanann had done, and in a complete rage, strangled Shanann to death. He claimed he then loaded the bodies into his truck around 5 a.m. and then drove to one of the remote oil sites where he worked. He said he buried Shanann in a shallow grave and put Bella and Cece in the crude oil tanks. Chris provided the police with the exact location of the remains. Investigators immediately went to the site, and at around 11 p.m., they recovered Shanann's body. They also found the missing bedsheet from the master bedroom, along with parts of a broken rake, which Chris admitted to using to cover her body with brush. Due to the complexity of the site, the police had to wait until the next day, August 16th, to recover Bella and Cece. This involved climbing to the very top of the massive oil tanks, which stood 20 feet high. There, they spotted a tuft of blonde hair near one of the openings. Investigators noted how small the openings were, only about 8 inches in diameter, leading them to wonder grimly how Chris could have possibly squeezed the little girls' bodies through. It took hours for crews to drain out the oil out of the tanks to successfully recover the girls' bodies. no one believed Chris's version of the story. Shanann was a fiercely protective and loving mother who would have never harmed her daughters, regardless of marital strife. The police concluded Chris was lying about Shanann killing the girls, and that his attempts to contact his family during the search were simply track-covering attempts. On August 21st, Chris Watts was officially charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 additional first-degree murder charges for the death of a child under 12, 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy, 3 counts of tampering with a body. A funeral was held for Shanann, Bella, Cece, and unborn baby Nico on September 1st in North Carolina. Chris was not mentioned once during the ceremony. On August 6, 2018, Chris entered a plea, guilty to all charges. He finally admitted that he was the one who killed Shanann and his daughters. At his sentencing on August 19th, Shanann's mother, Sandy Ruzek, delivered an emotional testimony to the court. She asked the district attorney to not seek the death penalty, ensuring Chris would live his life in isolation with the knowledge of what he had done. Her words, delivered directly to Chris, were devastating.
God makes no mistakes on who he puts in your life. Marriage is about love, trust, and friendship and unity. We marry for sickness and health, to death do us part. Our daughter Shannon loved you with all of her heart. Your children loved you to the moon and back. Shannon's family was her world. Shannon put a crown on your head. But unfortunately, the day that you took their life, God removed that crown. We loved you like a son. We trusted you. Your faithful wife trusted you. Your children adored you, and they also trusted you. Your daughter Bella Marie sang a song proudly. And I don't know if you got to see it, but it was Daddy, You're My Hero. I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives. But I know God and his mighty angels were there at that moment to bring them home to paradise. God gives us free will. So not only did you take the family of 4, your family of 4, you took your own life. I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. They will always be protected by God and his mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that he has mercy for you. From Shannon's mother, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine, and Nico Lee's Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
Chris Watts was then sentenced to 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 48 years for the unlawful termination of the pregnancy, and 36 years for tampering with the bodies. The same day as the sentencing, Shanann's parents filed a wrongful death suit against Chris. In November 2019, a judge ordered Chris to pay them $6 million. While Chris was and remains financially broke and could not pay, the verdict was seen as a necessary symbolic victory for Shanann's parents. Chris Watts' fate in prison was immediately sealed by his horrific crimes. He was a famous child killer facing constant threats, eventually requiring his transfer to a maximum security prison in Wisconsin. It was there, on February 18, 2019, the FBI investigators conducted his first interview since his guilty plea, and he finally laid out the unvarnished story of his affair and the murders. Chris claimed his attraction to Nicole Kessinger was fundamentally egotistical. He said that Nicole was the one who approached him, which made him, quote, feel really good about myself, end quote. This self-esteem boost coincided with him losing weight and getting into better shape, a physical transformation driven by the affair. He described his new relationship as easy, saying Nicole constantly wanted to have sex and made him happy, which ironically he claimed provided the motivation for the murders. He suggested that if Nicole hadn't entered his life, he, quote, might have just continued living his life the same way he had always had, end quote. In short, the pleasure of the affair was not enough. He needed to eliminate his family to fully enjoy it. In this final, definitive confession, Chris revealed the true, sickening sequence of the murders on the morning of August 13th. Chris said he woke up and first attempted to smother Bella and Cece in their beds. He then went to Shanann and told her the relationship was over and he wanted a divorce. He claimed Shanann reacted violently, telling him he would, quote, never see the girls again, end quote, which Chris said sent him into a blind rage. This claim of rage, however, is undermined by his own admission that he had already tried to kill the girls, meaning he already knew he wouldn't see them. Chris then got on top of Shanann and choked her to death. In a haunting and harrowing detail, he confessed that during the middle of his brutal attack on Shanann, little Bella walked into the room and asked what was happening, asking if her mum was okay. Chris, surprised she was still alive, lied. He told Bella that Shanann was simply not feeling well and told her to go back to her room. He then wrapped Shanann's body in the stripped bedsheet, put a plastic bag around her head and feet, and loaded her body onto the floor of his work truck. He then brought both girls out of the room, still alive, and put them in the back seat. He lied again, telling them they were going to take their really sick mum to the hospital. The girls, with their blankies and a stuffed animal, felt safe enough with their father to nap in the car as he drove 40 miles to the remote oil site. At the oil site, Chris removed Shanann's body and buried it in a shallow grave. As he did so, Bella and Cece asked him what he was doing to Mummy. After the burial, he returned to the truck and suffocated Cece by putting her blanket over her head. He then took her body, drove to one of the oil tanks, and stuffed her small body into the narrow 8-inch opening. What he revealed next is arguably the most sickening detail of the entire case. Before he killed little Bella, she turned to him and asked if he was going to, quote, do the same thing to her that he had done to her sister Cece, end quote. She cried out, quote, Daddy, no, end quote, and actively fought him off before he ultimately smothered her. He had a 40-mile drive, an endless window of time to change his mind. The girls had miraculously survived his first attempt, yet he proceeded with the murders heartlessly. He confessed that when he heard the girls' body hit the oil, he knew they were truly dead. He then considered killing himself but decided against it, supposedly not wanting to traumatize the person who would find his body. A moment of sick, twisted consideration following a quadruple murder. Afterwards, Chris dumped his clothing and the girls' blankets at a construction site before stopping at a 7-Eleven for breakfast. He continued to claim he had no premeditation, saying the murders happened only in a fit of rage after Shanann's threat. This contradicts his online searches for a 2-person car and his admission of the prior smothering attempt. His defense that the entire murder sequence was the epitome of being angry and an instantaneous reaction stretches belief past the breaking point, given the time and distance involved. Most damningly, Chris confessed that he had been secretly giving Shanann oxycodone to try and induce a miscarriage. He was giving his pregnant wife this powerful drug because the baby, Nico, made him feel trapped. Right before her death, Shanann had been experiencing intense stomach pains, which may have been the result of Chris drugging her. The specific source of the oxy remains a crucial question, leading to lingering suspicion about who may have facilitated that drug access. Chris Watts is still in a Wisconsin prison, working as a custodian and largely keeping to himself. In what has become a true jailhouse cliche, he has become very religious, even self-publishing a book of prayers with another inmate. One prayer sums up his self-pity, quote, my past is a blueprint and the devil is the architect, end quote. In his prison exchanges, Chris Watts has continued his pattern of shifting blame and revisiting his story through the lens of newfound faith. He frequently references Nicole Kessinger, calling her a Jezebel, using religious scripture to portray her as a woman who used her sex powers to fixate him and ultimately, quote, made him do this, end quote. He acknowledges that she knew more about the situation and that she was the reason he committed the murders. However, it is notable that Chris has never fully flipped on her. He refuses to tell anyone where he obtained the oxycodone he was giving Shanann, leaving a significant dark question mark hanging over Nicole's possible involvement in facilitating the drug, allegedly. Despite his horrific crimes, Chris still receives frequent correspondence from female pen pals. Women who find him attractive, pity him, believe they can change him, or even subscribe to the grotesque idea that Shanann was the problem. One such woman, Sherilyn Cradle, did an interview sharing details from Chris's letters. In his letters to Sherilyn Cradle, Chris directly contradicted his original claims of a random act of rage. He admitted to thinking about and planning the murders way beforehand. This confirms the mounting evidence, the search for a two-person car, the attempt to induce a miscarriage with oxycodone, and his cold, calculating actions on the morning of August 13th. Sherilyn also visited Chris and described his unsettling demeanour when discussing the murders. She noted his eyes would go dark and he spoke in a casual and matter-of-fact way, almost as if he was simply reading a script, further cementing the view of Chris as a man capable of extreme emotional detachment. Chris Watts still maintains contact with his mother, Cindy Watts, who has continued to support him publicly. In interviews, she has insisted that she will always support Chris, stating she cannot understand what went wrong and claiming there was, quote, never anything throughout his childhood that indicated that he was capable of doing something like this, end quote. This statement, delivered after Chris has confessed to slaughtering his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters, adds another layer of familial denial to the case. Cindy described Chris as a, quote, very quiet, very good kid, end quote, who was reserved. However, her true focus quickly shifted to Shanann, whom she immediately disliked. Cindy publicly detailed numerous small criticisms she harbored about her daughter-in-law. Quote, it was always a little strange that she always said a lot of things about Chris in front of me that I didn't like. Like, this isn't the kind of person I would date. He doesn't know how to do this, or he doesn't know how to do that. Look at his hair. It was just on and on and on, and I just got a bad feeling, end quote. She confirmed that the hostility was so intense that neither she nor her husband attended their son's wedding in 2012. Quote, we didn't attend because Shanann and I just couldn't get along, and I didn't like the way she treated him, end quote. Cindy framed Chris as a victim in the marriage, describing him as anxious and completely submissive to Shanann's demands. Quote, Christopher always seemed anxious, and when she needed something, he would run. He wouldn't walk, he would run, he would get it, end quote. She found his eagerness to serve Shanann very odd, suggesting this pressure had driven Chris to the breaking point. She confirmed that Chris was not excited about the 3rd pregnancy, which came as a shock, and that he had been talking about divorce, saying, quote, I finally thought he's finally seen the light, end quote. Cindy's denial persisted even after Chris's confession and guilty plea. When her family was first reported missing, Cindy admitted her immediate thought was that Shanann had simply run off to punish Chris. Even when Chris called her to say the police were searching the house, she was not worried. After Chris pleaded guilty, her stance remained bafflingly skeptical. Quote, I just can't see him doing that. Why would you plead guilty to something you didn't do? And that's what I want to know, end quote. She held on to the hope that Chris would tell her the truth later, even if it meant he was innocent and only took the deal because he believed he would go to jail anyway. Her utter confusion was evident. Quote, it's bewildering to me. It is. It is absolutely. How does this happen? How did this happen? End quote. Adding further complexity to Chris's deceitful life, multiple people came forward after his arrest claiming to have had affairs with him. Specifically, 2 different men claimed they had slept with Chris. One man, identified as Trent, gave an interview claiming he had started a relationship with Chris, believing Chris had separated from his wife. Trent claimed Chris told him he loved him, though they broke up before the murders. Naturally, Chris has denied this, just as he had denied a separate claim from a woman who said she had met him once for sex in a Chick-fil-A parking lot. Regardless of these unverified claims, the one person we know for sure was central to the motive and the timeline of the murder is his co-worker, Nicole Kessinger. Now, we turn our attention to the woman who became the catalyst for Chris's horrific final act. I want to quickly thank the Burden of Proof podcast on Chris Watts because for this section, I got a lot of my information on Nicole from their podcast. Just a caveat, I'm also not accusing Nicole of anything directly. I'm just stating information that is out there. The narrative now shifts entirely to Nicole Kessinger, the woman who became the catalyst for Chris Watts' unthinkable crime. For many observers, she is not simply an unwitting mistress. a mountain of suspicious details suggests she may have known more or even been involved. Nicole Kessinger entered the investigation early, proactively calling the police herself shortly after news of the disappearance broke. She claimed she saw the news reports and felt compelled to confess to the affair. Many viewers found her actions suspiciously calculated, almost as if she were trying to follow the public relations blueprint set by Amber Fryer, the mistress of convicted murderer Scott Peterson. Amber Fryer did cooperate with police, wearing wires and recorded calls with Peterson. However, Nicole's motives appeared less authentic. Investigators found that Nicole had Googled how much was Amber Fryer's book deal, a query suggesting a focus on capitalizing on the tragedy rather than genuinely assisting the investigation. This immediately raised red flags about her intentions. The timing of Nicole's contact with the police was highly suspicious. She reached out almost immediately after Chris's manager notified investigators about the affair. This timing suggested someone may have tipped her off, leading her to try and get ahead of the investigation by establishing a narrative of herself as the shocked, betrayed mistress. During her interviews, Nicole made several claims that were later proven false. She initially acted as though she didn't know Chris was married when their relationship began. Evidence later proved that she did know. She claimed that while Chris was in North Carolina visiting his family, she told him their relationship was over and urged him to fix his marriage for the sake of his children. However, their phone records from that time showed constant, continued flirting, not the conversations of two people who had just broken up. Just days before the murders, Nicole spent several hours searching for wedding dresses online, a highly contradictory action for someone who had supposedly just told her boyfriend to reconcile with his pregnant wife. In a classic maneuver used by those with something to hide, Nicole also deleted a massive amount of data from her phone right before handing it over to the police, all while portraying herself as a cooperative witness. Specifically, she deleted 2 phone calls with Chris on the day Shanann went missing, one around 5 p.m. and a much longer one lasting 51 minutes at 11 p.m. And a 4-hour search session on August 14th where she looked up interviews with Chris Watts, Shannon's disappearance, and the highly pertinent question, can cops trace text messages? This last search was particularly damning, as Nicole claimed in her interview that she didn't find out Shanann was missing until the day after these searches were conducted. Even more bizarre were the long-deleted searches dating back to 2017. Police found data showing Nicole had been searching Shanann and Chris's names long before she officially met Chris. This discovery led to intense public speculation. Was she obsessed with Chris, or even Shanann, before meeting them? Did she intentionally seek him out? Compounding this theory, a picture emerged showing Nicole participating in an event at the same hospital where Shanann worked in 2017. Furthermore, data showed Nicole frequently visiting Shanann's Facebook page, viewing the loving Father's Day post Shanann dedicated to Chris, and even seeing the pregnancy announcement. Despite seeing the pregnancy news directly, Nicole still insisted during police questioning that she didn't know Shanann was pregnant. She also claimed she thought Chris and Shanann were separating, yet her phone contained a search query, quote, "The man I'm having an affair with says he's leaving his wife," end quote. This specific wording strongly suggests she knew the separation had not yet occurred. When confronted with these contradictions during her police interview, Nicole reportedly became frustrated, claiming she couldn't recall details from so long ago and minimizing her relationship with Chris, saying they only went out a couple of times, a claim easily disproven by police GPS data. The suspicious details surrounding Nicole are not limited to her digital footprint. Her actions in the hours surrounding the murder are also highly questionable. On the day after Shanann went missing, Nicole told Chris to pawn Shanann's wedding ring, which had been found in the house. For a woman trying to appear shocked and cooperative, urging a man whose pregnant wife and daughters are missing to dispose of the wife's ring is viewed as profoundly callous and highly suspicious. Nicole had no solid alibi for the time of the murders. At 6 a.m. on August 13th, her phone pinged off a cell tower near the Watts' house, despite her living 25 minutes away. For months, her phone only pinged near the Watts' home when she admitted to being there. Her claim that this particular ping was a glitch or a technical error is questionable, especially given that her phone had correctly pinged off a different tower when she FaceTimed Chris the night before. Nicole's cell phone history showed she usually made a phone call every hour she was awake, yet on August 13th, she made no calls until 2 p.m. This lengthy silence was very abnormal for a routine. Nicole did not clock into work that day until 3 p.m., well after her usual start time. Her behavior at work was bizarre. She clocked in, made a couple of phone calls to her spiritual leader, and immediately left. This sequence suggested she was trying to rapidly create some form of alibi, showing she was at work when she was supposed to be. The most puzzling and telling activity occurred in the early morning of August 14th when a detective was trying to call Chris. The sequence of calls was chaotic. Between 1:12 a.m. and 1:58 a.m., Chris and Nicole exchanged several phone calls. At 1:58 a.m., a detective tried calling Chris. For 10 minutes, the calls went back and forth, with Chris answering but the detective only hearing dead air. During this back and forth, Chris called Nicole again for 1 minute. Chris then called the detective back from his work phone. While Chris was on the line with the detective, Nicole called Chris's personal phone and he answered. Both Chris and Nicole stayed on their respective lines for 11 minutes. The widely speculated explanation is that Chris was trying to secretly set up a three-way call between himself, the detective, and Nicole, but technical issues caused the dead air. When that failed, Chris used his work phone to put the detective on speaker, while Nicole called his personal phone so she could listen in on the police investigation. Why would Nicole, a supposed mistress betrayed by her boyfriend, need to secretly listen to a detective questioning him about his missing family in the middle of a night? The only logical reason is to suss out what the police knew, either about Chris's story or about herself. Finally, there is a lingering suspicion regarding the oxycodone. Evidence was found that, at one point before the murders, Nicole and Chris talked on the phone. After they hung up, Nicole called a clinic and allegedly asked if oxycodone was safe to take during pregnancy and how much would cause a miscarriage. Combined with Chris's refusal to reveal where he got the oxycodone he was giving Shanann, claiming he would take that secret to the grave, and repeatedly calling Nicole a Jezebel, who was the catalyst for his actions, many people, including legal analysts, suspect Nicole may have helped him obtain the drug, if not aided him in planning the murders. Despite the wealth of suspicious data, Nicole has since changed her name and gone into hiding. The most frustrating details for those seeking justice is that police stated that they never looked into her further, solely because Chris confessed and removed the necessity of proving who committed the murder. The question of Nicole's true involvement remains one of the darkest unsolved elements of the case. We've walked through the timeline of betrayal, the chilling details of the confession, and the unsettling questions that still linger in the shadow of this case. But as we close this chapter, we have to pull our focus away from the monster and shine it brightly, relentlessly on the beautiful lives that Chris Watts extinguished. Shanann Watts was a force. She was a woman who battled lupus, who fought health issues, and who still rose every day to become a top leader in her field. She was ambitious, she was loud, and she was fiercely protective. She was a mother who celebrated every single milestone, who documented her love and pride for her family, because to her, they were her entire world. Her life was defined by the fight to build a beautiful life, not by the cowardice of a man she married. And then there were the girls, the bright lights Chris Watts snuffed out in a crude oil tank. Bella, 4 years old, the protected big sister, the girl who sang, "Daddy, you're my hero," the one who, in her final moments, showed heartbreaking clarity. She was awake, she was afraid, and she was asking the man who was supposed to be her hero, Daddy, no. Her life was curiosity, laughter, and a love that was betrayed in the worst possible way. Celeste, 3 years old, or Cece, the sweet, quiet one. She was the baby, still clutching her stuffed animal as Chris drove her 40 miles to her death. Her life was pure, innocent, and entirely dependent on the man who had already murdered her mother. And of course, Nico, the son who never got to draw a single breath, whose potential was ended by the same callousness that fueled a plan to induce a miscarriage with oxycodone. Their deaths was not an accident, a mistake, or something born from rage. This was calculated greed. Chris Watts decided that his personal freedom and his new life with his mistress were worth more than the lives of his wife and his 3 children. He discarded them like garbage at a desolate worksite so he could pursue an ego-driven fantasy. He did not deserve Shanann's ambition. He did not deserve Bella's adoration. He did not deserve Cece's sweet innocence. The only justice we have is that he is exactly where he belongs, alone, isolated, and forever haunted by the lives he stole. Thank you for listening.